com, and one of the moderators here on Google Plus for the interior design community. I have a special show for you today. We're talking all about Pinterest. Pinterest has made lots of changes recently, and it's a great tool to use to get more business, and we are here to tell you all the up-to-date tips. We're going to pass over to our moderator, Leslie Carruthers, who is our social media moderator, and she's going to talk a lot to our great guests. Hi, Leslie.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. So happy to have you here with us. Thank you for taking the time on this Friday before Labor Day weekend. I hope everybody's getting ready to have a good one. And I want to say thank you so much to Jeff and Irene for joining us today. Both of them are Pinterest specialists in different ways, and I'm going to introduce Irene, and Lori is going to introduce Jeff. And most of you know Irene Turner, I think, who lives out in Sonoma Valley in California. Irene is a realtor, her husband's a realtor, she's a designer, and she has a brand new site called Irene Turner Real Estate Sonoma Style, and if you haven't seen it, make sure and see it, it's fantastic. Irene has over 4 million followers on Pinterest, and we are delighted that she's taken her time today to join us and share a few of her tips that can help you move your own businesses forward. Thank you, Irene, for being here with us today.
Thank you, Leslie.
You're welcome.
And I'm just going to pop over and say hi to Jeff. You are the guru on Google Plus about Pinterest. I know that we always think of Pinterest as being a girly thing, and it is not, because Jeff is always up there with his manly Pinterest tips. And the other major thing that you do, you're a Pinterest strategist. You work with companies, large and small, to develop Pinterest strategies that help them get business. Thank you, Jeff, for being here. I really appreciate it. I know you're super busy.
No problem. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk Pinterest with you ladies. So.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we are excited to learn from you. So, Leslie, I'm going to pass it over to you so you can get started.
Great. What we know that you want to see for everyone that's watching is what types of tips do Irene and Jeff have that can help you move your business forward. And so we're going to start, I think, with Irene, who is going to share just a tiny bit of her story with you, and then share some tips with you that have helped, how Pinterest has actually helped her move her business forward. So Irene, I'm turning it over to you.
Hi, everybody. I'm really glad to be here, and very honored to be with this group of people who really know what they're doing on it. I have to say that when I started Pinterest, it was a very personal thing. I needed a filing cabinet, and so I guess for anyone on Pinterest, if they ask me what's the #1 tip, I would say that, you know, create boards that are of interest to you, because in my opinion, social media is the best platform for how people get to know who you are. And no matter how virtual our world has become, at the end of the day, people want to do business with other people. So their way of getting to learn who you are is through your social media platforms. So I would say the #1 tip is to do things that are very personal to you in terms of what your interests are, how you see the world. Obviously, Pinterest is a visual experience, and so beautiful pictures are key. So that would be my second big tip, is make sure that the photos that you choose are large and beautiful. And then the third thing is how you set up your platform in general. Make sure that you use your keywords in your profile area, and on your boards use keywords, because keywords are key. No pun.
What are keywords?
No pun intended.
For anybody that might not be familiar with social media, as we are, can you define keywords for them, please?
I'm sorry, I missed part of that, Leslie.
Or can you define a keyword for everybody that may not be as familiar with social media as all of us are?
So, for instance, interior design is a keyword if someone is searching for interior designers. Real estate is a keyword if someone is searching for real estate. I work out of Sonoma County, so I use Sonoma County where I can. So to name your boards appropriately. And also, there is a search engine attributes with using Pinterest, so that's important to make sure that your words are compatible with that.
Those are great tips. So talk a little bit now about how your 4 million followers have benefited your brand.
Well, I'll say the #1 the two benefits I've received is number one, traffic to my website and my blog. So that's been really helpful. And the second is it's really facilitated me in the interview process with clients because one story, for example, is someone called me and said that they wanted to talk to me about a renovation on their home out in the coast. And I said, well, why don't we get together and get to know each other to see if we're a fit? And they said, oh, no, we've been following you for months now on Pinterest and Facebook and Twitter, and you're a fit. So let's just meet and get started. So it's really helped me in the interview process for projects.
That's great. And earlier when we were talking before the Hangout started, you mentioned that there was a tipping point for you in terms of going from X followers to 4 million. Can you share what that was, please?
Yes. I had been pinning since the beginning of Pinterest, so I had been up to like about 100,000 something followers, and I had a board called Entertaining, and I changed the name of that board to Entertaining Sonoma Style. And within 4 months, I went from 100,000 followers to over 1 million followers, and it grew from there. Part of that, I think, is because there's a love of wine country and there's a romance about being around wine country, so Sonoma Style and wine country style was a big deal. And number two, Pinterest liked that name, and so they started helping to promote it. They were featuring me as a pinner and that type of thing. So I think between the both of those, it really helped. And because of that success, that's the name of my new company. It's Irene Turner Real Estate Sonoma Style. So I learned a lot from that.
That's very, very intriguing. So let me ask you a question. Do all of your boards have a lot of followers, or do just a few boards have millions of followers?
Most of my boards have 60 to 80,000 followers, but there are a few boards that have over 1 million, and Entertaining Sonoma Style has by far over 3 million.
That's amazing. That's very interesting, and that actually dovetails with the experience of another well-known pinner that we all know, Linda Quintero Davids, and having worked with Linda a bit, I do know that her board that's called Outdoor Living, that particular board has over 3 million followers on it. So not all her boards, just like you're saying, do have a lot of followers. So I think that's important for all of you that are listening. If you can key in, right, Irene, on
yep.
one, and I'll let you explain that, but maybe share with people how they can actually think to key in on what would be interesting to people that are on Pinterest, consumers that are on Pinterest. Do you have some tips about how they might key in on certain emotional words that are resonant with consumers in order to help promote their boards, like you've done with Sonoma Style, for instance?
Well, I think the first tip I would give anyone is that you need to be true to yourself, because you are your brand. And so if you want to attract people that you want to work with, you need to present yourself in a way that speaks to them. So for me, I love living here in wine country. I moved here in 2001. I think it's great. And so for me, I just started getting into how we entertain here at home and how people really enjoy it. And so that brought me to the Sonoma Style thing. So in each market and for each person, where is your specialty? Where is your love? Where is your passion? And use that to attract people to you, because then you'll attract the people you really want to work with.
And what you're really saying is or what I'm trying to get across through you is use the words in your board that are authentic to your brand. So so you were saying earlier that you had just labeled your brand, labeled that board. What had you labeled that board, and then you added Sonoma Style to it, and then all of a sudden it took off, correct? So,
absolutely.
So that's really, I think, a very important point that you brought up. All right. I really appreciate your help in sharing that with everyone. I'm sure everyone watching will get a lot out of hearing Irene. And Lori, I'm going to turn it back to you with Jeff.
Sure. I have a couple more questions, too. I was going to ask you, Irene, before I move over to Jeff, because I think this is a really key thing for people to listen to, and that is that you started with Pinterest when they were just in the beginning. Yeah. And that happens with early adopters. A lot of people wait until they see a social media taking off before they come on board. And then all of the people who started in the beginning sort of get rewarded by becoming suggested users for all of that new traffic sometimes. They establish themselves, that company knows how to position them. I know that when I started on Google Plus, I always talked about home decor, and so I was a suggested user for home if you were interested in, home and decorating and home decor. When any new user came on, you click through and it asks you what you're interested in, and it assigns a whole group of followers to those categories, and that's a real benefit from coming on early. So I definitely want to say that's fantastic that you were able to notice that and use it for that way. And then secondly, I wanted to ask, how has this helped you? I'm sure that a lot of companies want you to pin for them, but has it helped you use that brand relationship in a way that helped your business? Were you able to maybe work with brands to develop something that you wanted because of your following? I mean, it's always good to work on collaborative relationships.
I love working with collaborative relationships. I haven't really noticed that specifically yet, but I have worked with a couple of companies, and I don't know, my jury's out on that one.
Okay. I'd be curious to see if you could develop that, because I have found, when you do have this big platform and you do have this great audience, sometimes you can work with a brand in a different way. They want your piece. They want, obviously, your audience.
Right.
But you can always sort of work with them and figure out what is good for you. Like, we've had different brands on that have helped the design community just because they know we have this many followers, so they want to come here and help the design community, and that can be really beneficial. So,
I would love that. I have to say that most of the brands that have contacted me are 20-something brands, which is great. I mean, that customer is on the internet, right? So it's the perfect medium for them. But I'm not 20-something, and that's not my brand, and that's not who I am, and it's not authentic to my brand. So I've sort of let that one go. If I got brands to approach me who would be beneficial to my client and I believed in, I would definitely collaborate.
I think that makes a lot of sense, because of course they would love your following, but
Right.
there have to be a ton of brands who want the kind of followers you have. I mean, if you started pinning a bunch of 20-something clothes, your audience would go too. It's not like your audience is, waiting for you to pin 20-something clothes. You have a specific audience that already loves what you do.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense for you to work with a brand that doesn't, you always have to think about your audience first. That's the other thing. When you start growing this big audience, now you're responsible for them. You have to make sure that you're giving them the content that they actually want to see. So I'm really impressed that you didn't take the money and just give them, you ruin your audience basically by giving them something they didn't want.
No, you actually don't ruin your audience. You ruin your brand.
Well, yeah, it's both. Your audience leaves too. I would unfollow someone who I followed for one thing, and then all of a sudden I'm seeing something completely different. I think that people unfollow very easily, and it does both, I'm sure. But I'll move over to Jeff, because Jeff, you have some up-to-date. You're on the forefront of knowing all of the up-to-date Pinterest tips and tricks. Okay. I want your top ones, the ones that all of our designers new into getting involved on Pinterest and new into marketing for their industry, their little area. What do they need to do?
Okay, let me take you. I'm going to do my big thing, and this goes for every social media platform, but this for Pinterest too. All social media should lead back to your website. And numbers and stuff, all that's great, and I mean, but you always have to lead back to your website, because you want people to subscribe to your list, because that's huge to me, because that's Pinterest. I hope it never happens, but could someday go away. You think about MySpace, when people who built their business on MySpace, that's gone. So real quick, my philosophy is always bring them back to your website, sign them up, and then you own that list. And so as designers, you're wanting to sell to people, and so my thing would be use Pinterest to help bring people back to your website where you can capture their information. Some general information for Pinterest, some general tips. If you don't have a business account, there's two types of accounts for Pinterest. There's a personal account and a business account. Make sure you have a business account. That way you're going to have the access to these brand new Pinterest analytics that just came out this week or last week. Yeah, this week I think.
This week.
So you won't get them unless you have a business account. So make sure you have one of those. It's really easy to switch. You just go in and you just pretty much click a button and that switches you over. So make sure you have that. The other thing, and Irene talked about this too, is make sure you write good descriptions. A lot of people will when they'll pin something, number one, they forget to link it back to content. They'll just pin an image. Like let's say your designer's designed a room and they pin that room. Well, they don't link it back to their website or their blog where they're talking about it. That's one thing beginners forget all the time. So when you do a pin, make sure you go in and click that edit button and put that source in so that people can go back to your content.
So wait, I'm going to ask you one thing, Jeff, on that point.
Yep.
Because that's exactly right. So where, for anybody that's brand new watching this and hasn't done that yet,
sure.
Where do they do that on the actual pin? Can you share with them?
Yeah, you'll upload a pin usually from your computer. You've taken a picture of it and you click that upload a pin button. Well, as soon as you publish that, click on it, to view it. You want to make sure you can view it and see it the way it looks like. And then there's a little edit button or a pencil button. Click on that and there's a source right underneath. I believe it's your title. And you want to make sure you point that back to where your content is, because a lot of people leave that out, and so when you click on an image, it just gives you an image, and you don't have any link back to your content. Which
that is like going to be the number one tip.
Yeah.
Click on that pencil, everybody.
Yeah, because you want to make sure you're driving them back to your stuff. And the cool thing is, if you change some stuff up, if you change it, you can go back and edit that later. So you can always go back and edit that source on your pin. So that's an important thing too. If you move stuff on your website or you want to use that image somewhere else, you can go back and edit that pin. The other thing is we were talking about descriptions and how important that is. From what I've researched lately and talked to some other people like Vincent Ng and some other big pinners, hashtags really don't matter on Pinterest anymore. The only reason I use them is to brand them for yourself. Like whenever I do a post about my show, Manly Pinterest Tips, I'll still use the Manly Pinterest Tip hashtag just kind of for branding kind of thing. But your descriptions need to be, they don't keyword stuff. We talked about keywords a little bit before, and so let's say you're a designer, you don't want to say, hey, I'm a designer. You don't want to make it unnatural. You want to have it so it's kind of a natural description using your keywords, but you don't want it to look, like you're just throwing in, those keywords.
Yeah,
so,
designer, designing.
Yeah.
All at once.
it looks spammy, and people don't like that. And so I've heard anywhere from 250 to 300 characters is kind of the optimum kind of length of your description. And you can find, if you have trouble like me counting characters, you can do that with Word, or you can do that with there's some online tools where you can enter your description and kind of fit it in that little area. And the other thing, and Irene touched on this too, is the biggest piece of advice I got when I first started was from Peg Fitzpatrick, who said, be yourself. Don't just pin business stuff all the time. Since I'm in the social media field, I could just pin social media infographics every day, all the time, and just keep doing that. She said, show your fun side. And so I have a board, for some reason it gets tons of engagement on. I just called Geek, and I pin like Star Trek and Star Wars and fun stuff that I like and my kids like, and it gets engagement. But people, like Irene was saying, that connects me with them. They know I'm not just a corporate business guy pushing social media all the time, that I like this stuff. That's a funny pin right there. I'm going to pin that to my funny board or whatever. And so they see that I'm a well-rounded person, and I think that more than anything, helped grow my audience one of the quickest ways. So that's kind of some general Pinterest stuff. The advanced stuff, I would say, would be to be consistent. I pin twice a day, every day, no matter what. And I don't have a set time, but I do it in the morning and I do it in the evening. I mean, I make sure I do it. I'm on Pinterest twice a day. And that sounds easy, but it's really an advanced thing because people don't do it. They'll pin a bunch of stuff all at once, and then they won't visit Pinterest again for 2 weeks. And so you've got to be consistent. If you want to succeed and drive traffic, because Pinterest can drive tons of traffic to your site, you've got to be consistent. The other advanced thing I would say would be to use an advanced analytic platform. I use Tailwind. They have a free version. This new Pinterest analytics I haven't played with too much, but you really want to start drilling into seeing, okay, who's my top pinner? I need to connect with that person, because the best thing you could have is a super fan who loves all your stuff, and you want to acknowledge that person because they'll just continue to shout your praises through to everybody. So you want to see those super fans, acknowledge them, and maybe even pin some of their stuff they're putting out. And the other thing that I love, and one of the reasons I really started using Pinterest, is you can pin videos. And a lot of people don't know that you can pin videos. And so I have a board where, Lori pins to it. It's called Google Hangouts Worth Watching. And people pin to that. It's a group board, so multiple people can pin to it. And it's almost like a Reader's Digest of where people can come in and, oh, this looks like a good video to watch, and they can watch that. And so that's a really good way to, videos, and they can watch it right on Pinterest. So it's kind of a cool little thing that people really don't do. So that was me just kind of spouting off Pinterest information at you at 100 miles an hour.
I love it. I love it. Now, you also do Pinterest strategies for businesses, and when I'm thinking about a designer just starting out, do they need to go in as their business name right off the bat, or do they want to establish themselves as their name? Sometimes businesses change names, and what would you suggest for that?
It just depends on your company. I'm doing it as me because I'm kind of the mainly Pinterest brand kind of thing, and that's why I did it that way. And you can go back and switch it if you have a business account, I believe. But it just depends on your company. If you are the face of your company, I would leave it as your name, like Irene has done. She has Irene Turner at Sonoma Real Estate. That's, everybody knows that, and so it just depends on what, if you're having an employee do it, of course you want to have your your company name on it, and then you have your employee pin underneath that or something. But it really depends on your audience and what your long-term kind of goal is for the company. Go ahead. I think Irene had something.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, when I started, I was only interior design. So I was Irene Turner, Interior Design and Renovation. So when I switched it up and I just rebranded, and this has been only over the last 2 weeks to a month, I went in and I edited my profile, which Jeff was talking about earlier, and I changed it to Irene Turner Real Estate Sonoma Style. So the consistent thing there has been my name, because I am my brand. But I could edit, and that's key to know.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And I just think it's important, that one, you can go in and edit it, but my personal opinion is people do business with individuals.
Yep.
And it just, to me, it makes more sense. And Pinterest is almost kind of a more intimate kind of thing, and so I like having the name, but that's going to be a decision that somebody's got to make for their company.
I agree. Now that gets me thinking, what about scheduling pins? Are you for scheduling pins or not for scheduling them?
I don't currently schedule my pins. I pin a lot when I do it, those 2 times a day, and I know a lot of people say don't do that, but I really don't. I haven't had any pushback. Now, I'm not pinning like 100 pins at a time or anything like that. One of the things, the little kind of thing, when you first get started on Pinterest, instead of when you're trying to fill out your boards, because you want to have a lot of boards. If you look at Irene's board, she's got a ton of them, and they're all really niche categories and look really cool. And so the more boards you have and segmented, the better. But you want to have those boards filled out. You don't want to have a board with only 1 pin in it. You want to have at least the first row, I think it's 10. You want to have that full. And so what you can do is create a secret board and start pinning to that, and get your board the way you want it, kind of fill it up with content, and then make it public. And that way it doesn't dump all these pins on your stream. It just is there, and you can start pinning to it. And so when you're first setting up boards, I would use a secret board kind of to help manage that. And now I think you have unlimited secret boards, and so you can really play with how many, setting up your boards the way you want to and stuff like that. It used to be limited to how many you can have, but it's a lot of secret boards now you can have.
That's great. Irene?
I have one more point for interior designers. One of the things that I have used Pinterest for is with my clients. So I'll create a board. You'll see them on mine. It says project dash and then the name of the project, whether it's the person's name or if they want to keep it private. I create the feeling of the project. And that way they can go on and I can invite them to pin if they're on Pinterest, or if they're not on Pinterest, they can go to that board and they can see and get ideas, and it helps me to converse with my clients about what that idea is and what it could look like. So that's really another great way to use Pinterest as a designer.
You know, I actually had an interview with Interior Design Community a couple of months ago with Kelly Ellis, and we were talking about her book, Does my house make me look skinny? And it was a really cute book, and I actually read through it, and that was one of her tips too. And she said what she noticed when she actually makes the husband and the wife both pin, and she said eventually you see a pattern that will come, and then you'll be able to like get through those issues where one likes one thing, one likes another thing. You can kind of find the commonality. It's like I force the guys to pin too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I have a tip I'd like to add in here.
Sure, go ahead.
When you're pinning, and I have hired people to pin for my clients, but what I found is very important, and so for any designers that are watching this, or if you're a brand watching this, at least to me, the most important thing is to think, what will your audience, your ideal audience, what will they find most interesting? So you may find most interesting this, this, and this, but if you think first, what will they find most interesting? For instance, one of my former clients was the Curtain Exchange, and so when we were developing pin boards for them, I knew that one of the things that consumers would find most interesting was drapery hardware. That's something tough for consumers to find. So instead of going on the top row by color or something like that, we went by what we knew that they would really want to find, and that strategy worked really well. So I just want to encourage you to think first about, if you're trying to attract business from Pinterest as a brand or as a designer that might have merchandise, think first, what type of tip can you give the person you're trying to attract on your top row of your Pinterest board? So when they hit your Pinterest page, it's like, wow, that's just what I was needing. How did that person read my mind? And that will help.
I waffled on that for myself because I am a business and brand, and I have a product to sell, and my Pinterest to start is customized walls. It's not Lori Leisure. So I actually started out originally when it was invite only as Lori, but I moved over to my customized walls board pretty quickly. And I've struggled about, like, do I have boards on there that are not anything to do with design at all or home decor at all? And I definitely have played around with like different categories and how I could fit something that is interesting to me, but also in that category. But I've waffled on it so much I can't even tell you, because sometimes I'll look through my boards and I'm like, oh my gosh, I started a board on juicing. Like, who cares about juicing in my community? It's interesting.
Well,
Sorry.
I'm sorry, Irene, go ahead.
I will tell you, I wasn't much of an entertainer, and I don't do events or entertaining events or anything like that, but I will tell you the two most important things people will repin for me is alcohol and wine. And how to entertain, because that's what everybody's interested in. They all want to know how to do that. So, it has nothing to do with what I do as a business in either of the businesses, and yet it draws a lot of people to my boards.
Well, it's also lifestyle, right? I mean, you can expect that your client has this specific lifestyle. I've talked to our other moderator, Brandon, about this because he does a lot of luxury talk, and he actually was starting out going after different brands like Rolls-Royce and Bentley, and I'm like, it just makes sense because actually those are the same kind of clients that would want a luxury interior designer as well. I mean, it's the same people. So, it makes sense that, entertaining and then design and even real estate, that might be the same customer, really, that likes all of those things.
And Lori, I would say for you, to help you, I would say, and to anyone watching, like, if knowing what you do, removable wallpaper. So what I would want to know as a designer or maybe a consumer is interesting wallpaper installations, or how to hang wallpaper, or how to get the bubbles out of wallpaper. Those are the things that I think, like, that's just what I need to know. because someone coming to you for customized walls, now they may not know what that really is as a product, right, when they hit your board. So they may be looking and finding customized walls to find out helpful how-to tips. So I think the more how-to tips boards that you would have around your product line, I think you would get a lot more followers on those boards.
Yeah.
I have something to add to that real quick. What I would do on that exact same thing is I would make a pin and say, 15 tips to hang wallpaper, and it would lead back to a sign up to your site where they would get a free little ebook or something on how to hang wallpaper. Because one, it's driving back to your site, and two, you're collecting that email address. So, if you have a good idea or like the top tips for your clients, I mean, you don't want to do this with every pin, but if you have like 5 tips on, what are people looking for when they move into a new home, if you're a real estate agent, and have them go back to get that little bit of information, I would make them give me an email address so I can market to them later, because you are in business. And so that would be my thing, and I think a lot of people don't think about. They're so excited to share stuff, but they forget that I need this to market and sell my product to later. And so for your designers, try to think creatively about what tips can I package up, and it doesn't have to take a lot of time. You can make a little PDF out of it, and then make a really nice looking pin and pin that and direct them back to your site to sign up for that offer. And so that's just a little idea when you were talking, made me think about that.
Do you do that, Irene? Are you getting an email list together from your Pinterest followers?
If they sign up, I do, but I need to punch that up a little bit.
Yeah.
What Jeff was saying makes absolute sense to me, and so, yeah, that's a good one.
And it's really, yeah.
It's crazy that it does happen, these sites, we can't rely on them forever because you never know.
And Pinterest, right now is free, and that, they could do a Facebook, and start charging, I know I hope they're not going to do this, but, promoted pins are right around the corner. They're talking about that. I don't know what that means and what's going to happen. So, I mean, while it's still free, I would be driving, and I'm just a big proponent of driving traffic back to the list that I own, that I can market to later. Especially if you're a designer and you have services you're offering and you have products you want to sell. I mean, get them on an email list, and then start giving them a newsletter. I mean, it's tough. I know I'm in the same situation. It's like crud, another piece of content I got to put together. But that's where people are making their money, on those lists. It's just a matter of fact.
Yeah. Well, that is great information. We're actually ready to close out. We have our half-hour show, which is packed full of information, and we promised it. We delivered it. Make sure you visit interiordesigncommunity.com. Visit us on our YouTube channel and subscribe, and always on Google+, interiordesigncommunity.com. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Irene. Very nice to see you guys all, and have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you.